All right, good morning, everyone, on StreamYard. And we're just about set for our Friday, January 19th Ag Issues program with the opening of the state legislative session. We have our annual program, monthly program, with the two of our state legislators, Ken Rahjes from Agra and Jim Minnix from Scott City. And we're just about ready to go on the air live on 580 WIBW. So just stand by, and we will be set to go here in just a bit with our two guests. And we are set here in about 15 seconds to go on air. Good morning, everyone. Glad to have you with us on the program this morning. And also, we are on StreamYard right now, as you can go to our Facebook page at 580 WIBW. We're at WIBW News. And we're going to be joined here during the Kansas Legislative Session on a monthly basis by two of the gentlemen who were with us last year. State Representative Ken Rahjes, representing the 110th district in Agra, and also State Representative Jim Minnix, representing the 118th district out of Scott City. And we will talk to these two gentlemen coming up on this morning's Ag Issues program here on 580 WIBW. But before we do that, let's get an update on the weather. All right. On 580 WIBW, we're doing our weather forecast right now, and then we'll get into the heart of the program on a busy couple of weeks, first couple of weeks of the legislative session, first full week of the session. And we'll talk with Ken Rahjes and Jim Minnix coming up here in just a bit, and talk about several issues starting out the legislative session. But right now, we're getting an update on that forecast. And as I mentioned on air earlier, 40s and rain next week. It's going to feel awfully balmy for what we've seen here the last couple of weeks. And versus these single-digit low temperatures that we have this morning. There are no negatives on those, but nonetheless still awfully cold. And we'll get to that here in just a second. So stand by, and we'll be back on the StreamYard feed with our Ag Issues program coming up here in just a bit. All right, thank you very much, meteorologist Dan Holliday, with an update on the forecast. In the capital city right now, we have a clear sky, 3 above zero at Bullard Airport, 1 above zero at Forbes Field this morning, with the temperatures in our listening area single digits. It looks like, actually, funny as that is, looks like they're all odd numbers. I see lots of 1 above, 3 above, 5 above, 7 above, and 9 above readings this morning. On this morning's Ag Issues program, during the Kansas legislative session, we always have a couple of the state legislators on, and we're joined by the two gentlemen who joined us last year on the Ag Issues program. State Representative Ken Rahjes, who represents the 110th district in Agra, is joining us. Ken, good morning. As always, how are you?
Good morning, Greg. Always great to be with you.
And also joining us this morning, State Representative Jim Minnix, representing the 118th District from out in Scott City. Jim, good morning.
Good morning. Good to be here, Greg.
Jim, I'm going to start with you since you are back home in Scott City this morning. I know you had to drive back in some of the snow, but how are things looking out there right now?
Yesterday afternoon, the drive wasn't good at all. We got to Salina, decided the interstate was closing ahead of us, went south to McPherson and then west on basically to Great Bend and then 96 highway. And very little snow out here, but really high winds. It was over 40-mile-an-hour winds on the highway yesterday. In places it wasn't snowing, but the old snow was still blowing and sifting across the road. So it's extremely cold out here this morning, but I don't hear the wind blowing like it did yesterday.
And Ken, you're still in Topeka, but obviously you keep up to date at home. How are things looking around Agra?
Well, I tell you, I was ready to leave and got the executive call from my wife and said, stay there because of the blowing. In fact, while we were on the phone discussing what to do, the Weather Service radio went off and said we have a snow squall in Smith County. And knowing that it would take some MacGyver-like skills to get home, we decided to wait till this morning to head that way. And last week, I think it was just the opposite. I was ahead of Representative Minnix, but I still was about 40 miles from home, and it took me an extra hour and a half because I hit that wall when that front went through last time. But we had a little bit of snow at home, but again, it was primarily the blowing that just made it just would have been a very tough situation to get home, and so we just do it today.
Absolutely. And Ken, we've had the bitterly cold temperatures. We had this bigger snow last week, still the bitterly cold temperatures this week, but the legislative session is well underway too.
Well, the weather keeps moving, and the session, the clock gets rolling, so it kind of waits for no one, and so we get after it. Something unique that hasn't happened very often is sometimes, even when the state is closed, the legislature goes on their own schedule. Last week, we actually had a snow day. And even the first of this week, many committees were canceled on Monday just because we have so many folks that come back in. So it's been a quick, but also a interesting start where we may have missed a couple of days where we'd like to be, but we had our first big vote yesterday. And so I think plans are really coming together for packed schedules from now throughout. We've changed a couple things, like moved up some of our budget recommendations and getting a budget out earlier. So it's going to be fast action. And boy, my days have been packed with folks coming in and having a lot of meetings on trying to get some legislation done.
Jim, from your perspective, has it stayed pretty busy here the first few days of the session?
Oh, most definitely. I believe the governor a week and a half ago called off work for the administration on Tuesday. Our water committee met that morning. We have quite a few people who drive in from a distance, and those that couldn't, that live at home and drive that morning. I told them to be safe, but with the technology anymore and WebEx, it's easy for anybody to tune in. We've had some informational meetings on water. We've got more bills coming, but most of this week was spent on the tax issue, the big bill that we passed yesterday. And I'm excited to see what happens with that in this next couple of weeks.
Talking about that, Ken, talk about what's contained in the tax bill that was voted on yesterday.
Well, I think probably the biggest thing is the flat tax rate that was passed last year in the House, came up just a couple of votes short in the Senate for a flat rate, just a little over 5%. And there's a lot of controversy in some circles about that, but I think there's a lot of rhetoric because both sides are looking for political victory, looking for some savings for our retired folks when it comes to eliminating Social Security or income tax on their Social Security earnings, giving kind of everybody a bit of a relief for if you're a homeowner that standard deduction going up to $100,000. So that's up a few more $1,000. And those are kind of some of the highlights. There's a lot of different things. There's a privilege tax to keep some of our Kansas banks or community banks on an even keel with others. And so there was a lot of different things. The Senate, it did pass. There's still a little short for veto proof. The House did pass it. We had a few gone, but many of us believe that as the governor came out and said she would veto it, maybe next week we may get that opportunity. And it's going to be close if we do have enough votes for the veto proof majority. But again, I think it's a start. It's a start. And I at least am glad we're having votes on tax policy in January rather than saving them all till the end of March, first part of April. So, we'll see. I think this is a discussion point of where we really end up because, quite honestly, that's what our constituents, at least my constituents, were looking for tax relief, and it was disappointing we didn't get it done last year.
Jim, I assume for your district, the 118th district, kind of the same feelings in that aspect that you're getting work on this done very early in the session.
Yes, and it's something we should have accomplished last year, and with the politics and the veto and just narrowly could not override a veto. It slipped to this year, but the state's large excess revenue right now needs to go back to the taxpayers, in my opinion. And it's past time, but they're between sales and income and property tax. There's a little bit in there for everybody. You can pick any one of those taxes and see who benefits the most, and then the next one will be another group of people. So we think we have it balanced as well as we can. Adam Smith from Weskin did an amazing job with the Senate, or working with the Senate and the House tax committees to come up with this bill. I think it's going to be approximately $300 per family per year. But over 3 years, that's $1.6 billion estimated less taxes that the state of Kansas will receive over the next 3 years. We think it's an amount that we can handle. It will not put us in the jeopardy that we were in the past. We're still going to have our rainy day funds, and the state's actually financially in very good shape. By doing the tax bill early, in a way, it will make us pay attention to our spending the rest of this session. And I think that's a really good way of approaching things.
And Ken and Jim just mentioned it about the differences from the past. And we all know the situation that the state was put in. But like Jim said, marked differences from what this bill contains versus what we've seen in the past.
Well, I think one of the things that starts out, we start with a much larger balance sheet than what we had before. And, I think there's a lot of politics in this. And you have, I think, one group that wants to grow government and wants people to be dependent on government for their livelihoods. And I mean, government plays a role in some of these things, but we want to make sure that, we give those that are entrepreneurs or those small businesses and others that want to grow and want to try to fight what we're dealing with this economy right now, that they have some of those tools. And so, I hear and I read all the rhetoric of what they're saying, that this is going back to a bygone time. I think you just go back a couple of days to the state of the state. And I mean, there were a lot of things thrown about that a lot of proposals that we as Republicans brought out before that the other side kind of grabbed onto. So I think there's something in the middle that we can continue to work on. But I do agree with Representative Minnix that if we have a tax bill that has kind of set that foundation of where we are, that then we can make the right investments and the good investments, like water. I mean, water and what he has done over the last couple of years, his committee has been outstanding, and we look forward to using water as another building block as we move Kansas forward.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll have more with Kansas State Representatives Ken Rahjes from Agra and Jim Minnix from Scott City on this edition of the Ag Issues program here on 580 WIBW. right, and to all of you on StreamYard, we're in a commercial break on 580 WIBW. We'll be joining you shortly, and yeah, and you, Ken, I saw what was it when the commissions came in, did their reports? I can't remember who sent it out, but someone sent out a picture of you in your office with talking with someone.
Oh, probably Kent Moore, probably.
Yeah, no, that's
Kent
who it
Moore,
was.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was it was one of the good days of the year when the commissions come in and legislature gets to talk to farmers, to hear directly from them, and it was a good, candid, lively discussion, and so I think that's good. We're all just going to wait and see what's going to happen to this economy too. I mean, that's the other thing. So some things we as a state can't control.
Yeah,
we'd like to.
Exactly.
If it was up to us, we'd get the farm bill done. But
they didn't give any marketing tips though, Ken.
Well, no, they that's true.
I think there's as worried and hard to predict things as the rest of us, and they're the experts.
Right.
Yep. All right. Stand by for those on StreamYard. We're just about done with our commercial break on WIBW radio, and then we'll come back here just shortly. We are back on the Ag Issues program this morning here on 580 WIBW and also live on StreamYard as well. You can find that. You can go to our Facebook page at WIBW News or go to our YouTube page at 580 WIBW. It's our monthly update on the state legislature, and we're joined by State Representative Ken Rahjes, representing the 110th District in Agra, and State Representative Jim Minnix from Scott City, representing the 118th District as well. And Ken, I'll start with you, but like to get comments from both of you. This is also the week that the Kansas Commodity Commissions come in and give their annual reports. But Ken, as we were talking about off the air, good for the legislators to hear from farmers when they come in and give their state of the commissions.
Oh, absolutely, Greg. I mean, our the folks that represent them, or in a sense, the lobbyists and the other ones that come in, we see on a daily basis. It's good to hear from them, but even better to hear from working farmers that come in and tell their story of how things were on the farm or on any issues. I think that has one of the biggest impacts on legislators is to hear, as they say, from quote actual people, but those that these things affect from a personal basis. And to be quite honest with you, it was good to hear from our farmer leaders, and I think the underlying tone was that date back in May when the rains finally came back, and I did make mention of those that did present. They were all from very small towns or small communities, from those under a couple of hundred people to the one from the biggest area was from far southwest Kansas around the Johnson area. I think the whole county of Stanton's 3,000 people. So to perspective for some of our members on the Ag Committee to show also that we do have leaders in our really small towns and step up and can lead a statewide organization. But overall, I think most farmers were optimistic, those that serve on the commissions, and almost all of them that grow wheat said, hey, this is some of the best wheat I've ever seen. So that, I think, will get us hopefully through the winter time. Many wheat didn't come up in the last couple of years. So this is going to be different coming into the spring, and with all the snow we've received as well in many areas especially in western Kansas, in wheat area, that this could be good news. I tell the folks in Chicago, don't make too much of it yet. We still got a long way to go.
Yeah, and Jim, you know as well as anyone, actually having moisture when you're drilling wheat is a good thing. Hopefully you don't get the typical 60, 70 mile an hour western Kansas wind, because we all know what that does. But nonetheless, that has to be a better feeling out there too.
Oh, it does, and it's amazing. We've actually got some wheat that's 8 inches tall, and with the 14 inches of snow we had last week and the wind blowing 40 mile an hour, this year the wheat actually caught some moisture out there. Last year it was bare ground. If we'd had this same type of snowfall event, which we didn't, of course, in the drought, it would have piled up even more. But it helps our economy so much. This year, the triticale we plant in August to graze calves on that are coming off the cow herds, we're getting 3 and 4 times the amount of grazing days on it that we did the same crop a year ago. It just multiplies everything we do, and it's been a great blessing to have this amount of moisture.
All right, gentlemen, as we wrap this up, Jim, I'm going to start with you. Let's look at the water committee. You got a lot accomplished last year during the session. What are some of your goals as the chair of the water committee that you'd like to see this year?
We're going to talk a little bit more about quality of water this year. We've been concentrating on the quantity. We need to see some of our investment from last year's bill as it works through our economy. We did get a report yesterday from the Kansas Water Office. We'd allocated $17 million for small municipal areas to apply for grants to define their water system and have an engineer check it out and see if there's deficiencies in some areas, and then another fund for construction. For that $17 million in a very accelerated application time period over Thanksgiving and Christmas, there were over $380 million in requests. To me, that tells us what the demand here in the state of Kansas for working on our water infrastructure, just in our very small towns. This was limited to the smaller towns and capped in size. So that's some of the things that we'll continue to work on. There's a dam safety bill out there that will increase some fees and bring the inspection back within the department rather than outside engineering, and another multitude of bills out there that we will deal with.
Ken, I know House Ag Committee already busy. You talked about conservation, foreign ownership land bill. Plenty of things have already come up.
Absolutely. Monday, we're going to have a hearing on a bill looking at conservation. It's kind of a coalition of many different groups, not only agriculture, non-agriculture groups, of how we kind of move forward. I'm not sure, the funding mechanism I have a little concern with, but we're going to have a hearing and kind of see where it goes. Foreign ownership of land, of course, is one that we talked about last year. We had a bill, kind of reintroducing that bill, tweaking it a bit, and seeing where it goes. I think with some of our neighboring states have done some things. Probably something will need to be done there. A lot of times in our committee, we're almost more reactionary than trying to really set the world on fire. To make sure we've got some cleanup things we need to do. So, but we will be busy. We're trying to tackle issues again, like I said earlier, to help all Kansans, because as it says, if you eat, you're involved in agriculture. Well, that is the case, and so much like water affects everybody, so does what goes on in the world of agriculture. And so we will be busy also. Looking at some things, what's going on at K-State as they continue with some of their ag innovations. That's exciting as well, and glad that the Agriculture Committee is able to show our support as President Linton and others move K-State to that truly next generation land grant.
All right, gentlemen, we're out of time, but as always, very much appreciated. State Representative Jim Minnix from Scott City. As always, appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg. we've got so much to talk about. This time goes too quickly, but anybody has questions, please give me a call.
And State Representative Ken Rahjes, as always, a pleasure. And we'll talk to you next month.
Very good, Greg. Always looking forward to it. Stay warm this weekend, but I understand it's going to be warm, all things considered, next week. Good to see.
Yep. All right. And that is our Ag Issues program for this morning here on 580 WIBW. Stay with us when we come back. We'll get an update on the news headlines, and we'll check the weather forecast that comes up next.